Alright, y'all. So we're back. This is what, part 3. I think all we have left is bell housing bolts, the cross members that are under the trans, and the trans mounts, and then we'll be down and on the ground. I didn't intend to break this video up so far, but with my time schedule, I figure if I edit and post this as I do it, it'll be quicker than me trying to scramble and backtrack through everything. So part 3, we'll get the trans final removal, then we will move to part 4, which is going to be getting the new trans ready for install. I've got to go to Mazda and get some axle seals and a few other things tomorrow, and then we got to start getting the pedal box assembly out too before we do install. I was informed by somebody that we want to make sure we get our pedals mounted and have all our lines ran before we're going to put the new trans in. So we'll do the wiring and prerequisite pedal install, clutch line run, etc. on part 4, and then part 5 should be final install of the trans and going through everything else. A lot of things I'm not showing are repair work, like I've got 2 coolant hoses leaking, I've got some busted struts, broken end links. Those will be in a video where we put on some Takiko blues and some T&S green springs, and that'll be another video installment just to show how we drop the struts and put fresh struts on, along with we've got to fix the roof rack. There's a bunch of things coming out with these videos, so I appreciate y'all hanging along. Sorry that I made it so many parts, but we're getting there, slowly knocking it out. So let me get under the car and I'll show you guys the cross members that have to come out, and we'll go from there. So this cross member that my finger's pointing to, it's got 4 bolts in it. That one further back, and then that one, and one on the back side. We'll take that cross member down, and then we're going to take, sorry guys, it's barely any room for me and this phone under here, this cross member that holds, that bolts to the subframe of here, and to the front of the car here, and it has one of our trans mounts on it here. So we've got to take this side-to-side cross member, engine cross member, whatever it's called, off, and then we'll work the rest of them. We can find out what size socket it is, and I'll let y'all know. Look, it's only 4 bolts. It shouldn't be that bad. So this is a 17. I'm actually using my camera with my eyes. So these 4 bolts are 17 millimeters heads, and then we'll get these undone on this side, and then we'll go to the other side and drop those. Then this cross member will come out, and we're going to want to clean this. It's covered in trans fluid. I don't know what the previous owner did. They were a bunch of idiots and can't stand stupidity. So now we'll move to this side. We'll break the 4 bolts loose and go from there. That'll come out, and then we'll have to start worrying about supporting the trans and how we're doing that. So let me show you guys the other bolts. You might want to find a way to support this when you're working on that last bolt that holds it in, but shouldn't be that big a deal. Like I said before, make sure you guys label all this as like something you'll remember it. Like for me, I'm just going to call it a subframe cross member, and then I'll label this one here as a trans cross member. That way I know in the bolt bags what is what when it comes time to take them apart. You can see I got that subframe cross member out. Now I'm going to work on getting these nuts loose for the trans mount. The front mount, let's call it that. I keep calling it by the face, the way the engine sits, and in reality it's passenger side, driver side, front and rear. So this is the frontmost mount bolted to the trans. So these are 18 millimeter nuts on this mount. I'll take those down. Here in the short future, I'm going to have to get something out of the engine before I go any further. But once this is done, I'm going to break all the bell housing bolts loose That way, when I get the crossmember out, all I have to do is keep the engine supported and go from there. So now back up top, we'll break all the bell housing bolts loose, and I'll show you guys those. And then we'll get the floor jack and support the engine. I might try to work on making a cradle system to lay across the top of this thing so we can tie it to a ratchet strap, so if the jack moves, the engine doesn't fall. So let's go up top, guys. Alright, so you guys can see the bell housing bolts. I've got all of, there's one way down here, right in here, and you could probably take the trans mount or the front mount off altogether, but I was able to get a bolt and a breaker bar in there. I'm not worried about it. I'll worry about that taking the mounts off when the trans is out of the vehicle. So all the bell housing bolts are loose. There's one more on the front or the back side of the trans on the opposite side, along with the mounts. So I know I say so a lot, you guys. Apologize for that. The other thing left to do is undo this upper bolt and the rear 3 bolts on the rear mount. That's way down there. So since we got all these bell housing bolts done, what did I count? 4 up top, I'm pretty sure, and then there'll be a fifth one on the bottom side next to where the starter mounts. So all those are broke free. We're in a good fashion so far. I don't want to take them all the way out until I have the engine with some support underneath it, and I have a better idea of what I'm getting into and how to make sure I have additional support just in case my jack gets wiggled or something. I know it's a lot of up and down, guys. Unless you guys had 2 people working on this, this is just how the job goes. And yes, we will address the shifter cable once the trans is out. Yes. So we're back under. I've already got the bolt out. My phone had a charge for a little while, so let me get an angle in here where y'all can see. Bell housing bolt right here, and then where is it at? 1, 2, 3 transmission bolts. Somebody crossed this one, so it's being a pain in the butt to get out, but this one's already loose. So we're going to work on getting the 3 crossmember bolts out. I'm going to leave the trans supported by its 3 engine mounts, or 3 mounts. We'll go get the jack and get under here. So these are 17s. This was a 19, and then these bolts down here are 17s as well, I think. Let me see if I got my wrench here for my socket. 17. So this is going to be a 17 as well to drop this crossmember. So, you guys, it's a real pain in the butt sometimes doing this. So, break this loose. And no, I'm not worried about the engine because it's supported up there still with 3 bolts. So sometimes you got to use everything you got to hold this. So get these undone like this, and then on the front there's 2 bolts instead of the nut. You'll drop this cross member, and then we'll work on the bell housing bolts and the rest of the trans mount bolts. Let's get some light on this.
these two bolts here are 17s as well. Those will come out, and then that crossmember will come down. Yeah, sorry if it sounds like I'm huffing and puffing, but I'm wheezing while I'm underneath here, so we'll just do what we do. Alright guys, you guys can see the crossmembers out. The rear subframe crossmembers out. We have a couple bolts on the back, the rear mount, holding the trans to it. We have the 3 bolts holding the trans driver's side mount. I'm going to get a jack in here to support the engine. You want enough pressure on the engine to hold it up, but not enough pressure to do damage to the pan. And then once this is supported here, then we'll work on dropping this separately. Now the other thing I did, and I'll show you guys when I crawl out from underneath here, I tied the engine to the strut bar. I know the strut bar isn't super solid or strong, but in an oh shit situation, or oh crap situation, pardon my language, it'll at least give me time to get something underneath to support the engine. So let's crawl up top and show you guys how I tied that off. I had a plan to run a piece of square 4x4 across it, and it just wasn't going to work like I wanted it to. So down at the bottom, there is a place to hook a strap to. And what I did is I just wrapped it around here for now, just to give it some type of leeway or support. So if the jack fails, it gives me time to get something underneath it to support the engine. And it's not actually touching. It's really close to the coils. If it fails, it might break that coil, but hopefully that don't happen. And I've got it tied off to this too. So when I get a jack under there, I'll start breaking all these bolts fully, or taking all these bolts fully out. We'll take these out. There's 3 of them. And then the trans should be good to go down. So, well, here goes nothing. Let me get those bell housing bolts free. $18mm bolt head through here. Currently I have a trans jack under the trans and a floor jack under the engine with a block of wood. That bolt's out. I have taken out this bell housing bolt here. I've got 2 more here, 1 and 2. Those are going to come out. And then I have 1 bolt in the rearmost trans mount. And that's a 17mm, I believe. And that one's crossed-threaded, so I'm going to have to impact that out. Whoever did the work on this before was a yoke. He's just an idiot. Whoever works on cars like this just needs to be slapped. So, we'll get... Oh, forgot. There is a bell housing bolt down here, and that's out too. So let me get these 2 other bolts out. And the 1 trans bolt. Actually, I think I'll do the rear mount bolt first. Get that one squared away. That way, all I have to do is the bell housing bolts after that. That way they have some support. So let me get a 17mm on a really long extension and get after that. Sorry guys, I'm trying to videotape and think as I'm doing this. Then we show the trans on the ground. I don't have a fancy cordless impact or anything like that. I use a simple old school Kawasaki Costco Sam's Club special. So to get these bolts out of the rear mount, I'm using that impact because I simply just don't want to be laying underneath the car with the engine and the transmission supported by stands. So we're going to gun these 2 bolts out. There's 1 at the bottom, 1 at the top. The middle one's already out. And the top one's pretty much loose already. So we'll get those hit and removed and go from there. Alright y'all, this is why you don't let dumbasses with impact guns work on vehicles. They think all you can do is gun them in without making sure they're straight. So I'm sure this bolt looks like this. This trans bell housing has been stripped as well. Lucky we're not reusing the trans. I just thought I should show you what I found underneath there. That is the lowermost bolt. And it took everything my little impact had just to get it out. Here's what it's supposed to look like. Clean. No damage to the threads. So, we got that out. I've got the 2 bell housing bolts left up here to do. And then the trans should be free. Idiots. Gotta love them. Can you guys guess what is missing? That is right. The trans is out. So, along with the big-ass 19mm headed bolts along the top of the bell housing and the sides, down here in the bottom, it's hard to see, but underneath the, down in here, and under the bottom side of the motor, there is 2 14mm headed bolts and a 12mm. I guess if I knew they were there, I would have taken them off earlier. So just a heads up and an FYI when you go to do that. And I know it's kind of late now, but you guys should find that. Also, the mount, I had to take the mount out of the firewall altogether, or the driver's side trans mount off altogether to get enough clearance to drop it down. And you guys can see, there it sits. So, now, the next step will be that I have, since I have some room, we'll start working on getting the shift cable out and we'll start working on the pedal assemblies before we work on reinstall. That'll be another video, probably starting Tuesday. Today's Monday. No, today's Sunday. So, God, I say so a lot. Anyways, next step, work on the pedals, pick up the rear main, pick up the axle seals from Mazda, and we're going to start getting that trans squared up and cleaned up, as well as getting the pedals in. And as I said in the very first video, we're not using a standard Protege clutch master that feeds off the brake master. We are going to use a B-series truck clutch from the early 90s, or truck clutch master, which will bolt still in the factory location, but we have to modify the pedals somewhat. So, getting there, guys. Slowly but surely, a little bit at a time. I wonder if you could put a 302 in here. That would be an interesting thing. Put an old school carb 302 and make this rear-wheel drive. Not that we're going to do it. That was just a random thought. Sorry, guys. So, trans out. We're going to conclude part 3 at this junction. And we'll pick up at part 4 when I get the rest of the parts. Once again, thanks for watching, y'all. God bless.